Hello. Hi, Olivia.
Hi there.
How are you? How did how did your son's senior breakfast go today?
Oh, it was such a blessing. It was wonderful. It was so nice to see all the different kids, and it's emotional, and you're just happy. You're just happy, to
That's
see. Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
wonderful. Well, let's see who else is joining us. Oh, we've got Catherine and it says captioner. Well, welcome. Welcome to the high speeds class. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Let's start off with some common words to get our fingers going. I'll go ahead and, oh, let's see here. Captioner. Hi, I'm new and can't chat. I'm in a library. Oh, hi, Angela. Okay, no worries. I totally understand. No worries at all. All right, let me go ahead and mute everyone. Okay, well, welcome. Welcome, Angela. Okay, ready? Let's go. Boys, recently, mine, papers, committee, file, when, entirely, lines, style, consideration, tonight, catalog, wire, delivery, means, reach, usual, excuse, beautiful, water, correspondence, expense, fun, reading, wonder, lost, started, others, among, record, appreciated, light, dress, makes, carry, action, married, decided, teacher, wait, merchandise, June, met, application, immediate, man, won't, dozen, possibly, sense, holding, states, accounts, circumstances, trade. All right, let's do some common phrases. You're going to phrase as much as possible. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't go, I didn't go, whether he will go, good many days, good many times, government's exhibit, grand jury, great detail, great extent, great many days, great many times, had been, had felt, had recalled, had recollected, had remembered, could have been had, I can't have had, I have had, it would have had, may have had, must have had, shall have had, should have had, so I have had, so you have had, that he had, that I had, that you had, there had, to have had, we have had, what he had, what I have had, what you have had, when he had, when I had, when I have had, when you had had. All right, now these are going to be briefs, and I'm just going to run through them. If there's anything that you have a question on, let me know, and I will give you the brief. I'm assuming you guys probably know these, and if you want, you can just write it out. It's something that you don't want to brief. All right, most of them are pretty standard though. All right, here we go. In other words, as a matter of fact, for example, previously, alcohol, alcoholic, I don't do, I don't get, I don't go, I don't even, I don't believe, I don't say, I don't see, I don't imagine, I don't feel, I don't get, I don't understand, I don't think so, I don't imagine so. Did you say, do you say, can you say, could you say, would you say, will you say, when you say, that you say, to your knowledge, to your recollection, to my knowledge, to my recollection. So if you guys have any questions about any of those, just let me know. Okay. All right. All right, let's do some names and addresses. Here we go. Daniel R. Spina, Spina, 107th 6th Street. Oh, that's weird. 107th. I think it's supposed to be 107 6th Street, Cresskill, New Jersey, 07626. Charlene L. Moss, MOSS, 107 Terra Drive, Bay, Arizona, 72412. Tyler B. Wolf, WOLF, Coldwater High School, 310 North 2nd Street, Coldwater, Ohio, 45828. Karen J. Garrett, GARRETT, Route 4, Box 34, Folsom, Louisiana, 70431. Marion A. Milling, MILLING, Ella Area Public Library, 137. South Bushing Road, Portland, Oregon, 96704. Ms. Milson Pace, PACE, Route 225, Colville, Utah, 80407. Vertical File Librarian, Barrington Area Library, 505 Northwest Highway, Barrington, Illinois, 60010. Patricia I. Ware, WARE, Route 1, Box 152-4, Katy, Texas, 77449. Bonnie G. Shub, SHUBB, Jones Day, Rivas, and Pogue, 1735 I Street, Northwest, Washington, D.C., 20006. Mrs. Dorothy R. Burnett, BURNETT, 1740 Aspen Village Way, West Covina, California, 91791. Elaine S. Parker, PARKER, 106 Tanglewood Drive, Jacksonville, North Carolina, 28540. Waterloo Community Schools, 1516 Washington Drive, Waterloo, Iowa, 50702. Shirley N. Spiegel, SPIEGEL, Appleton Public Library, 225 North Oneida Street, Appleton, Wisconsin, 54912. Kim L. Parrish, PARRISH, Route 1, Box 4B, Fork Union, Virginia, 23055. All right. I'm just dating this so I know that we've covered it. I've got some dates. Some are ordinals, some are not. All right, here we go. July 5, 1983. March 13, 1962. September 18th, 1970. February 23rd, 2015. December 9, 1988. June 2nd, 2010. August 8, 1998, January 15th, 2011, April 25, 2014, May 11th, 2005, October 16th, 2001, November 1st, 1955, April 21st, 1990, August 30th, 2012, October 9th, 1962, June 5th, 2016, January 25th, 1993, May 8, 2012, September 18, 2014, July 16, 2015, March 23rd, 2007, February 8th, 1999, December 6th, 2018, November 11, 2016, October 2nd, 2005, January 31st, 2010, April 14, 2014, July 11, 1972, October 1st, 1997, December 27th, 2015, February 22nd, 2001, and May 30th, 2014. All right. Let's do some Tangle Tamers. Here we go. Immigration policy, powerful aftershock, government announced, variety of clusters, domestic supply, higher percentage, weather conditions, ceasefire unheeded, grinning broadly, unidentified woman, fantastic celebration, fatal shootings, orchestra performance, sanctions working, forecast dismal, voluntary action, disturbing neighbors, and local newspaper. All right, now I've got a drill here. That's a similar word drill, focusing on why, she, they, who, etc. Here we go. When did he go to the classroom? What did she say to the gentleman? Where does she go when she leaves the office? What will they do when she finds out? Will he go to the library after work? There is a light at the intersection. Will she deliver the package? Why won't she bring the documents? Where did that come from? Who is responsible for the delay? Why does he come and go like that? Come here and bring what is on her tray. What did she say the doctor said to her? She hadn't said anything about the conversation. They will arrive when she has left. Why does he do that every time she comes in? He is getting annoyed by her constant nitpicking. Will they bring their car with them? They will come if she doesn't go. What did they say? Let me say that again. What did they say they would do if she came late? She came with them at noon. He knew she would pull a stunt like that. When they come by, give them this. It won't be too long to give them this. Why should I do it for her? What will it take for you to do me this favor? It won't be too long before she gets here. Where will the road take us? All right, let's do some final consonants that focus on RG, RGZ, RM, and RMZ. Here we go. We lost our bearings on the farm. The terms of the job were boring. We were staring at the swarm of bees. The amount on the form was staggering. A daring man determines his future. If the earrings alarm you, hide. He was swearing while he was shearing. I am aspiring to own a worm farm. Do you affirm that they are acquiring it? The paper was adhering to the warm wall. No harm will come from her adorning you. Alarms were sounded by the stammering boy. I was admiring your form. You determine who does the steering. Bearing storms, we will make it. She hurt her forearm out on the farm. The storm washed away the berm. She is starring in a great play. The bugs came in swarms. They were tearing the forms apart. All right. Now, this is going to focus on the opposite side of the machine. So we're going to focus on the initial side, FL. Okay, here we go. Flawless flaxseed is flavorless. Flat-footed people have flattened feet that flop. Florists use flowers to make floral arrangements. The flashing floodlights flickered and fluctuated. Flagging a train down is flashy but flippant. The flagship flew its flags fleetly. The flapper flippantly flourished her flesh. Your flamboyance is a little flaky. He flipped over her flirting. Our flag flew over the flesh pots. Flyers like to fly over the flagpoles. He sat out the flares with flair. Floridians are floating flirters. Fleet-footed flatters flounce floppingly. Mrs. Mitchell's florist used floppy floodlights. Fleeting flesh-colored flippers fly floppily. Fireflies fly flippantly. Florence was a flippant floor walker. The flagrancy of the flacken was flaccid. Flirtatious Floridans fly fleetly. Some of those are tangle twisters. All right. Let's do some medical words. Here we go. Let me just date this, so I know we've covered it. All right. Here we go. Esophagus, the tube that leads from the pharynx to the stomach. Eversion, a turning outward. Epithelialized, covered with or converted into epithelium. Excision, the act of cutting away or taking out. Fascia, the fibrous membrane covering the muscles and other tissues. Femoral, pertaining to the femur or the thigh bone. Femur, the thigh bone. Fibrosis, the development or formation of fibrous tissue. Fibula, the small outer bone of the leg. Flexion, the process of bending. Fossa, a depression, furrow, or sinus. Gangrene, mortification or death of a part of the body caused by interference of local nutrition. Gastrocnemius, the largest and most superficial muscle of the calf of the leg. Green stick fracture, a fracture in which one side of a bone is broke and the other being bent. Gyri, the convulsions of the brain and the spiral cavities of the internal ear. Gelyi, inventor of the Gelyi wire saw, a wire with saw teeth used in cranial operations. Hamstrings, the tendons of the posterior muscles of the thigh. Hematoma, a tumor or swelling containing blood. Hemo, pericardium, effusion of blood into the pericardium, membranes, sac around the heart. Hemorrhage, any discharge of blood from the blood vessels. Hernia, a protrusion consisting of an organ or part projecting through some natural or accidental opening in the walls of the natural cavity. Hilus or hilum, a small fissure, notch, or depression. And homogeneous, having the same nature. All right, one last drill. This is going to focus on final words that have the final less and final full. Okay, so final LS, final FL. Okay, here we go. I'm going to just read you some of the words. I'm going to read you each one, like 2 words versus the 1 word, okay? And you can choose which one you want to do first. Then you'll know once we hit the sentences. Okay, ready? Careless, care less. Worthless, worth less. Fearless, fear less. Spoonful, spoon full. Cupful, cup full. Penniless, penny less. Okay, here are your sentences. He was very careless. I couldn't care less. Don't be so careless. Those are worthless. That is worth less. It's worthless junk. I know he's fearless. I couldn't fear less. It's a fearless time. I know he's penniless. Charge a penny less. He said I'm penniless. It's a hopeless case. I couldn't hope less. Are you hopeless now? The miser isn't penniless. He's absolutely fearless. That stuff is worthless. 1 spoonful will cure her. The old one is worthless. The book is meaningful. The pauper was penniless. The acrobat is fearless. You hope less than I do. He's a careless driver. They care less than you do. Use a cup full of sugar. Don't take a penny less. I hope less than you think. You have worthless stocks. Use your 2 cupfuls. Is your cup full? It takes a cupful. Try 2 spoonfuls. Is the spoon full? Use your spoonfuls. Those are worthless. Take 1 spoonful. Pour 1 cupful. The case is hopeless. They seem fearless. Use a cupful of yams. They were tearful. I am very careful. I am not careless. All right. I have a poem for you guys. Thought we could start off with literary. It's called With His Mouth Full of Food. All right, here we go. Milford Dupree, though he knew it was rude, talked with his mouth full of food. He never would burp or walk out in the nude, but he talked with his mouth full of food. His mother said, Milford, it's crude and it's lewd to talk with your mouth full of food. Why, even the milk cow who mooed as she chewed, never mooed with her mouth full of food. And the cuckoo would never have ever cuckooed if he cooed with his mouth full of food. His dad said, get married or go get tattooed, but don't talk with your mouth full of food. If it was a crime, you would surely get sued if you talked with your mouth full of food. Why, just like an animal, you should be zooed as you talk with your mouth full of food. For you know, we're all put in a terrible mood when you talk with your mouth full of food. They pleaded and begged. He just giggled and chewed and laughed with his mouth full of food. And all they advised him, he simply poo-pooed. He poo-pooed with his mouth full of food. So they sent for the gluer and had his mouth glued, 'cause he talked with his mouth full of food. Now instead of good morning, he says, good mornin'. I want to win many marf foo-foo fog. And I think it's supposed to be, I won't talk with my mouth full of food, but the way it's spelled, it looks like one took win men marf foo-foo fog. So I think that's what they mean. All right. Let's do some literary. I'm going to give you, it's 1 paragraph. It's legal terms in paragraph form. I'm going to read this once at 180, again at 200, and again at 225. Okay. All right, here we go. First time at 180. Actually, I'll do it backwards. I'll do 225, 200, then 180. Okay, here we go. A bailiff is an officer who maintains order in the courtroom. Bench refers to judges and to where a judge sits in court. A bench conference is a meeting of lawyers and judges at a trial outside of the hearing of the jury. Bias is prejudice. Burden of proof is the legal duty to prove a disputed fact. Chambers refers to the judge's office. Circumstantial evidence is indirect evidence. A clerk is a court employee who is in charge of the records and files. Closing arguments are statements by an attorney near the end of a trial to persuade the jury to decide in his or her client's favor. Colloquy is discussion. Okay, so let's do that again at 200. Here we go. A bailiff is an officer who maintains order in the courtroom. Bench refers to judges and to where a judge sits in court. A bench conference is a meeting of lawyers and judges at a trial outside of the hearing of the jury. Bias is prejudice. Burden of proof is the legal duty to prove a disputed fact. Chambers refers to the judge's office. Circumstantial evidence is indirect evidence. A clerk is a court employee who is in charge of the records and files. Closing arguments are statements by an attorney near the end of a trial to persuade the jury to decide in his or her client's favor. Colloquy is discussion. Okay, last time at 180. A bailiff is an officer who maintains order in the courtroom. Bench refers to judges and to where a judge sits in court. A bench conference is a meeting of lawyers and judges at a trial outside of the hearing of the jury. Bias is prejudice. Burden of proof is the legal duty to prove a disputed fact. Chambers refers to the judge's office. Circumstantial evidence is indirect evidence. A clerk is a court employee who is in charge of the records and files. Closing arguments are statements by an attorney near the end of a trial to persuade the jury to decide in his or her client's favor. Colloquy is discussion. Okay. We're going to do a little bit more literary. All right. How are we doing on time? Good. Perfect. And this class goes until 7. Okay. We'll end right at 7, but I extended it until 7 so that on Thursdays I have a roller derby class and I have to be there at 7:30. So I thought, well, if we start at 5:30, then that'll give me extra time and we can end right at 7. So hopefully the later time works for everybody. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. All right, here we go. So here's some legal opinion. I'll start at 180, work my way to 225. All right, here we go. The plaintiff sought damages in 2 counts from defendant Community Hospital for injuries allegedly sustained when she slipped and fell in the hospital lobby after being discharged as a patient from the hospital. After the jury failed to reach a verdict on count 2, the trial court entered a directed verdict for defendant and then entered judgment on the verdict. Plaintiff appeals from that judgment, contending that as to count 2, she presented sufficient evidence to withstand a motion for a directed verdict. Count 1 of the complaint alleges premises liability. The trial court directed a verdict in favor of the defendant as to count 1 at the close of all the evidence, and plaintiff does not appeal from that judgment. Count 2 alleged negligence, that defendant breached the standard of accepted care in the manner of discharging plaintiff, and that plaintiff's acts or omissions proximately caused plaintiff's fall or injuries. Prior to trial, pursuant to Supreme Court Rule 220, defendant served plaintiff interrogatories regarding any experts from plaintiff that they might call. Plaintiff did not respond to the interrogatories. When the trial began, plaintiff stated that she had no expert witnesses. At trial, the plaintiff testified that on June 4, 2011, she was discharged from the hospital following an operation which had been performed 9 days earlier. That morning, plaintiff had taken pain medication prescribed by Dr. Kelly. Plaintiff received no information about the discharge procedures. From her room, plaintiff signaled the nurse that she was dressed and ready to leave. The nurse told her to come to the nurse's station, which plaintiff did, carrying her bag. Plaintiff testified that she inched her way toward the nurse's station, slipping and sliding due to her pain. Her difficulty would be obvious to anyone observing her, as it took approximately 20 minutes to get down the hallway. The attending nurse then told the plaintiff that she could just leave. In the elevator, plaintiff felt sweaty, dizzy, and nauseous. As she walked toward the hospital entrance, the plaintiff slipped and fell. Plaintiff testified that the floor was slick and the carpet buckled where it was taped down, but she was not sure what caused her to fall. She was subsequently admitted to a different hospital for alleged injuries to her back and legs. Plaintiff then tendered Dr. John Kelly, her treating physician, as her intended expert on the standard care of questions. Defendant objected because of plaintiff's failure to identify Dr. Kelly as an expert. Pursuant to Supreme Court Rule 220, the court ruled that Dr. Kelly's testimony would be limited to questions concerning his actual care and treatment of the plaintiff. Dr. Kelly testified that plaintiff had a normal recovery from surgery and that he considered her progress in walking to be normal. He saw the plaintiff prior to discharge and found that she had no problem walking. Plaintiff was given no pain medication on the day of her discharge, although she did receive a pain pill. The medications which plaintiff received on the previous day would not affect her ability to walk or her sensory abilities the following day. In regard to the plaintiff's discharge, Dr. Kelly testified that plaintiff stated her husband could not pick her up until later in the day, and that Dr. Kelly indicated that this would not be a problem. Dr. Kelly informed the attending nurses that plaintiff would be leaving sometime later in the day. Dr. Kelly stated further that he had no knowledge of how the patients leave the hospital, specifically on a specific patient. It was Dr. Kelly's understanding that the normal course would be that somebody would accompany the patient to the first floor or to the car. That was his understanding, and it has been his experience. When asked if he was familiar with the defendant's discharge policies, Dr. Kelly replied, "These specific policies, no, but the normal policy that somebody would accompany a patient, yes, I am familiar with that policy, but I haven't studied the book of policies." At the close of the plaintiff's evidence, the trial court denied defendant's motion for a directed verdict. Mary Cook, the attending nurse, testified for a defendant that she observed the plaintiff walking without difficulty on the day of her discharge. At about 9 a.m., Dr. Kelly had informed Cook that plaintiff could not get a ride home until later in the day. Shortly after 10 o'clock, Cook was surprised to see the plaintiff walking down the hall on her way out of the hospital. Plaintiff was accompanied by 2 nurses who were carrying plaintiff's bag and purse. Plaintiff held the arm of one of them. Cook, who was on her way to change an IV for a patient, asked if the plaintiff needed assistance, and the plaintiff replied that she did not need any help. Cook told the plaintiff that if she could wait a minute, Cook would be right back. When Cook returned, the plaintiff was gone. Cook testified that it was the defendant's general policy to walk with the patient to her car. This policy was established to protect both the patient and the hospital personnel. Cook did not discuss discharge procedures with the plaintiff prior to her leaving because she had not expected the plaintiff to leave so early. Ann Parker, an emergency room nurse for the defendant, testified for the defendant that she treated the plaintiff in the emergency room on the night of June 4, approximately 12 hours after the plaintiff was discharged. The plaintiff told Parker that she had fallen in the hospital lobby that morning and that she was not alone at the time, but had been accompanied by 2 other nurses. Plaintiff complained of pain and bleeding, but did not complain of other injuries as a result of the fall. The trial court denied the defendant's motion for a directed verdict as to count 2 at the close of all of the evidence. When the jury was unable to reach a decision, defendant moved for a judgment notwithstanding the jury's inability to arrive at a verdict. The trial court stated that it had erred in not previously directing a verdict at the close of the plaintiff's evidence. All right, let's do some jury charge. And I did work my way to 225 with that. All right. Here we go. These are plaintiff closing arguments. And we'll start at 180 and work our way to 225. Now, on the direct examination of Mr. Meso, we went into a lengthy questioning session. We took him all the way back to the past 20 years of his employment. We showed how he started out as an apprentice electrician, and then before that, the laborer, how he was in the service, how he did heavy labor, and he was a skilled type laborer, which required him to use his arms above his head. We did that, ladies and gentlemen, for a purpose, not only to show what I consider to be a very credible history of a fine gentleman in the true American tradition, but we did that, ladies and gentlemen, for the purpose of showing that Mr. Meso was working with that arm and doing heavy work, pain-free, without any limitations, putting in many, many hours of overtime work. Ladies and gentlemen, there is not one iota of evidence that Mr. Meso had pain in that shoulder or in the neck before the injury in this case. So we suggest, in accordance with my comments a little earlier about what to do when there is an inconsistency or contradiction, we suggest that when a physician renders an opinion but gives no basis, in fact, for that opinion, and furthermore, where there is no basis in the record for that opinion does not deserve recognition. Dr. Connor, in this regard, again, he was called as an expert at the last moment. The plaintiff was claiming that an injury to the cervical spine let's face it, what is bothering this gentleman are not x-ray findings. Yes, there were x-ray findings on the shoulder. He got along very well with that arm through the years. It is the pain that has resulted from the injury of this case. It is the pain that keeps him up at night, that causes him to go into traction, that limits him in his physical activities at home and on the job, pain in the neck radiating outward, numbness in the hand. So when this gentleman is sent to an expert for the purpose of giving an opinion and analysis of what extent he was injured in that accident and what extent of claims of neck injury and neck pain were valid, naturally you would expect a physician to give an opinion about his neck pain. Dr. Connor testified that he was not giving any opinion about Mr. Meso's neck pain. He did not have any opinion. The test that Dr. Connor took is entirely consistent, entirely consistent. That was an objective test that was done by way of needles. And I am not going to go through the manner that the test was done. We all heard about the comments about it a few times in the trial. But the point is that Mr. Meso not only demonstrated atrophy of the shoulder girdle muscles on a visual inspection, but in addition, the test that Dr. Connor gave was positive. Dr. Connor testified that there was severe nerve damage. On cross-examination, he located the origin of the nerves that were damaged. Where? Do you recall his answer? At C5 and at C5. C5, of course, refers to the cervical spine, a nerve root in the in the cervical spine. So, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the medical testimony that you heard does establish the burden that Mr. Meso had to meet with reference to what took place anatomically at the time of the accident, extent of his injuries, the need for treatment, his disability from work, his need for future treatments, and ongoing disability. Now, at this time, I would like to undertake a discussion of the value of the damages Mr. Meso suffered. Let's go ahead and take that on. All right. What are we doing on time? Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with some Q&A. This is a continuation what we were working on the other day. This is the, it's all about a horse accident and a veterinarian that's giving his opinion. Okay. And plaintiff is questioning. All right, I'll start at 180 and work my way to 225. Here we go. Okay, that's fair enough. I believe she may have been. And Jenny's last name is Ness. Can you spell that, please? N-E-S-S. Thank you for the record. I know you can't speculate, but is it the general intent or wish that she wants to come back with whatever her illness is? Has it been discussed that she's probably going to come back or probably not going to come back? Actually, she is still working some part-time, but if you called right now in the morning, she wouldn't answer the phone. So she's working for you some part of the day at this time? Well, not every day, but she comes in and still does some computer work for me. Okay, does she live out in the Chino San Dimas area? Upland. I see. Now, let us assume for a moment it's the same secretary. When you walked in December 2013, let's assume it was Jenny. Would you hand her a chart of your treatment of a particular horse? Can you define chart? Well, charting, the way I look at it, is when you are rendering medical care or aid and you write down your findings and opinions, HNP, and so on and so forth. So you would have a chart of the background of the horse and what you found and what you did. Yes. Do you have a pre-printed form as a vet? Do you check off things like for an H&P or something? Yes. And would you have done so for Sweeter and Honey? Yes. And do you do that on all the horses that you are called on to render some aid to? I mean, do you have like a front page where you just do a check or a quick H&P as to why you are called out to treat some horses? It depends on the ranch. Some ranches, the work is done. They keep track of their own work, and then they give me a copy. At the end of the session, they give me a list of the horses that I actually worked on and what I did. And that then goes and gets put in the computer in the files. In other words, if there's more than one or two horses, sometimes all of the horses are put on the same paper. I see. And I guess it really works for two purposes, one for billing and one to keep a medical chart so you know what you did, correct? Yes. All right. And in this case, do you know if you treated more than one horse on the day of the incident? back in December, specifically December the 9th, 2013. At the Adams? Yes. Or for the whole day? No, just the Adams Ranch I'm concerned with. I do believe that was the only horse I treated that day at their place. I could double check to make sure, but as far as the best of my knowledge, that's the only horse there. Do you remember the time of the arrival at the Adams Ranch on the day of the incident? I believe it was roughly, I'd say, late morning, early afternoon. And do you remember how you were called to the scene, so to speak? I was paged. Do you have one of the Sky Riders that can type in a message, or do you have to call back and say, yes, who is it, and what do you want? Well, I have an answering machine, or excuse me, an answering service that picks up. I also have a paging system, and my staff will let me know if someone calls the office during hours that I am closed. I believe this call came in through my call center, so I was notified from my staff. I see. Do you have any recollection as to this particular case that you were called into the office and they said the Adams need you or something like that? Yes, if it was after hours, which I believe it was, a horse was hurt. I got notified that their horse was hurt while trying to load in the trailer. That's the page. Okay, and that would have been given to you. If it was in fact Jenny that was working there at the time, it would have been given by Jenny that gave you the message. That put it in my email, yes. I see. And when you say put it in your email, what does that mean? Well, we have a setup at the office where she can type on the computer any message and then she can email me. And then the email system goes to my phone and it is instantaneous and my message will come through on my cell phone. And in this case, do you have a recollection that this had occurred? As far as I can remember, yes. All right, so what would it have said? Horse cut, horse needs help at Adams Ranch, go immediately, or what? It would have given me the location and the problem and the telephone number. So do you remember relative to this case getting at least an email? Yes. As to the problem at the Adams Ranch, correct? Yes. Did you then call somebody before you got to the ranch? I will usually call the ranch to see what the severity is and the problem, if it's something that can wait an hour or two, or if it's something that needs to be taken care of right away, an emergency. I believe I probably called the ranch at this time to see the severity of the problem. You have a recollection of making a call? Yes. Do you have a recollection of who you spoke to? I believe it was Mrs. Adams. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. And what did she tell you? What did this person, when you did call the Adams Ranch, tell you? That the horse has a laceration that needs suturing. Did they tell you what horse? I believe that they said the filly, a filly. And what was your response? I will be right there. And how long did it take you to get there? As far as I can remember, I would say probably within an hour. Do you remember if you were at another ranch or another locale rendering the services, your services, when you got the call? I probably was. I don't remember exactly where I came from. You then went over to the Adams Ranch, traveled over to their ranch. Is that correct? Yes. And that was within about an hour, you say, correct? Yes. And you believe it was before noon? I can't say for sure. Your best recollection is what? Approximately, I would say between 11 and 3. Okay. Now let me tell you one thing I probably should have reiterated. No one is going to accuse you of perjury if you say it was a little bit before noon or something, and you say it's my best recollection, and it happens to be 12:35 or something. Just do your best. For those responses, and I believe your attorney would agree with me, if you tell me approximately or my best recollection is generally in this time frame or something like that, no one is going to be critical of you if you have a mistake in recollection or something. Mistakes in recollection are common, you know. We all understand that. So you don't need to be too cautious. Just use your best recollection and memory is all we are trying to find out here, okay? So you got over to the Adams Ranch. Do you remember when you originally got there, whether somebody met you and told you about the problem? I believe I pulled up to the ranch, pulled into the facility, and I saw the horse standing there. I mean, it was apparent to you. Some horse had blood on it or something. I could see the lacerations, yes. I see, and you had been advised apparently that some horse had lacerations that needed your vet services. Is that correct? Yes. And if you could, I have not had the opportunity to be on the property. Could you just sort of draw me a mental picture when you say you got there, is there a long road that you drive in on, or how would you get in? Well, you want the actual directions? You don't need the actual directions, right? Well, no, I don't need directions as to where it is, but I mean, when you drive into the ranch area or whatever, do you have to go down a long road? Do you have to make a left-hand turn, or where do you eventually go when you saw the facility? You want from the gate of the property? Yes. From the gate of the property, there is a driveway that's probably approximately 100 yards, 75 or 100 yards. The filly was standing, I believe, somewhere around where the barn area is located. And was Mrs. Adams out there at that time? Yes. Now, when you arrived at the scene, did you have anybody with you? A friend of mine was with me. Somebody has described that individual as your girlfriend? Yes. And what was her name? Lori Simon. And did Lori work for you at the time? No. What was she doing with you? I had just gotten back into town, I believe, either that day or the day before from a meeting. I was gone for a week, and she was just riding with me to keep me company. We hadn't seen each other, in a week. Did she have any special training in veterinary medicine? No. Horses? She wasn't involved in this at all? No. She was just a friend that didn't know anything about horses or treating horses, just went along with you to keep you company. Is that a fair statement? Well, she had horses, so I would not say she didn't know anything about horses. She has horses, but at the time, she was in radio. I see. Well, from your perspective as a DVM, was she there to assist you in the treatment? No. Of this particular horse? No. Make sure to let him finish his question, okay? Okay. Now, whether or not she went there to assist you, did she have any, in this entire incident, did she have any involvement of holding the horse, loading the horse, getting near the horse, touching the horse, or anything? No. Now, at a certain point in time, I think, of course, I am assuming facts that we haven't established yet, but you treated this horse sometime during the course of the day, correct? Yes. All right. Now, was Lori involved in any way with handling your materials or helping you suture the horse or give it medication or anything? No, I do not believe so. So she was just a witness standing there at the scene. Actually, if I remember right, I believe she was holding Mrs. Adams' daughter. I believe she was playing with Candy most of the time. And that child was about 2 years old at the time, or a year old, maybe younger, I'm not sure. All right, fair enough. Is Lori still your girlfriend? We are just friends. And where does she reside? She lives in Chino. Can I have her address, please? I believe she lives on Mistletoe. Do you know the street number? No, I do not. How about her cell phone number? Her cell is 928-4701. What is the area code? I think it is 951. Is she still in the, what did you say? Radio business, broadcasting business? I believe she does some radio work, voiceovers and things like that. Let me ask you, have you ever had a conversation with Lori as to whether or not she saw the events where Mrs. Tipton was injured? I don't. I remember talking to her a while back about it, and I don't really recollect exactly what her comments were. What I'm trying to get at is, I don't know. She might have been 400 yards away playing with the child and said, I didn't see anything. Or she may have said, I saw this and I saw this activity or whatever. Did she indicate to you in any way that she was a witness to any of the events? She didn't indicate to me in any manner, no. You didn't ask her whether or not she saw it? I don't really remember. All right, now again, going back to your computer-generated chart, if I was to request a copy of the chart, that would have been listed under Taylor and then the name of the horse probably, correct? Yes. And you have, in fact, reviewed at some point in time, maybe about the time you got the lawsuit, you have looked at your computer-generated chart, correct? Yes. And is that information only on the board or, the hard drive of your computer? In other words, do you have a paper file folder somewhere in your office or a thumb drive or something like that? Well, we have it on a thumb drive, yes. A thumb drive. Yes, a thumb drive. I see. So you aren't back in the 90s? You don't have just paper files per se? Well, we do have some paper files that we keep, but of that period of time, I am not sure. I'm not sure exactly how long we keep the paper files now. Everything is put on the computer and saved in the files. I could find out. I know since we have the computers, we don't keep paperwork as long as we used to. Okay, very good. Now, when you go into your office, and I'm referring generally to the time frame of 2013, when you go into your office and give your secretary the HNP, the chart, what are your findings or what your findings were and so on and so forth relating to this horse and this incident, Would you have kept up through today your handwritten notes from out in the field? They may or may not still be around, I'm not sure. And what would dictate whether they are or not or are not around? I believe we keep them. I want to say at least for a year, but I'm not exactly sure. I would think they may still, we keep them in the boxes, and as the boxes get full, I'm not exactly sure how long we keep the boxes, but they are in the storage. It could be there. I mean, we could try to find it if you want it. Well, you looked at it when you got the lawsuit, correct? I looked at the computer chart. Oh, I see. You didn't look at the handwritten chart? No. I see. Have you made a copy of the chart for anybody? No. And the computer chart, to the best of your knowledge, you still have it? Well, that's in the computer or the flash drive. Okay, now, how is the material from the handwritten or the handwritten material go to the computer chart? How do you get it from there to there? Is it in, or does the secretary do it, or the interpretation of the secretary? It's typed. Does she type everything that is in the handwritten? Yes. But it has been your experience that if she can't read your writing, that she will come back and ask you what it is before she gets into the computer? Yes. So as a general statement, you can tell me that whatever your chart, generally speaking, all of it will get onto the computer. Is that correct? Yes, it is. And would you represent to me that what is on the computer is a fair representation of what you charted out in the field on this particular horse, on this particular incident? Yes. Now, when you go to the ranch, you have a general recollection of seeing Mrs. Adams, correct? Yes. When you originally got there, do you have a recollection of seeing Mr. Adams? No, not initially. And had you ever met Mrs. Tipton? Yes. Prior to that day? Yes. When did you first make her acquaintance? A number of years before that, approximately maybe 9 years before that. I see. And had you had a continuing business relationship with her? Not continuing, just sporadic. And if you could just generally summarize what was your business contact with Mrs. Tipton up to the time of the incident. Well, when she lived in El Monte, I would do the work for her, and I would, if I saw her horse at the horse shows, I would go and say hi, or I may do some work for her if it was needed. And I saw her at a Norco show for another client that she had in training. So I guess we might say not one of your most frequent clients. Yes, you've got to let him finish, or excuse me, let me finish. But you had continuing business relations of treating some of the horses that she had ownership of or possession of over 7 or 8 years. Is that true? Yes. Did you also know her husband? No. So when you arrived at the Adams Ranch on that day of the incident, you recognized Mrs. Tipton? Yes, I did. And did you chat with her about what had happened to the horse? Probably. Do you have a recollection of it? I remember having a conversation with Irene and Diane, meaning Mrs. Tipton. Yes, I see. Yes. Anybody else that I talked to? Yes. I said, I talked to Candy, the daughter. This 1-year-old or 2-year-old? Yes. I see. You were exchanging pleasantries with her and so on? Yes. I don't think I'm too concerned with that conversation, to be honest with you. But I'm just trying to get down now when you originally got there. I imagine they might come up and say, gee, doctor, let me tell you what had happened here earlier. Is that essentially correct? More or less, yes. And Mrs. Adams, what to the best of your recollection today did she tell you happened? That the filly was trying to be loaded and she resisted and sustained an injury to her leg. Now, up to this point in time when you are getting this information from Mrs. Adams, other than the possibility that you had just given was it genetic testing, what was the test that you just told me about? I don't remember the tag on it. For what? You said that sometimes when a horse, for the foal? Yes, it's called an IgG blood test. Blood test or genetic testing? No, just antibodies. Okay, now other than that, do you have any recollection of ever having any contact with this particular horse? I know you can't rule that out. I'm just giving you that fact. And other than that, do you have any? Not on top of my head, no. So would it be fair to say, doctor, that at the time that you originally came to treat this animal on December the 9th, 2013, that you didn't have any information and background about its temperament other than what they would have told you at the scene? Is that true? Yes, other than the fact that it was a young horse. Does that carry with it some special disposition? Well, sometimes. Okay, and as a veterinarian that treats these kinds of horses, what precautions or what thoughts are going through your mind when you are dealing with a young horse like this, what you have just told me about? Well, sometimes they have a little bit more of a hyper temperament. Not always, but I've seen it both ways. Okay, let me ask you this, Doc. When you were out there, was it your understanding that this was the first time that this horse was trying to be loaded onto a trailer? The first time for that day? No, ever. I'm not real sure if I know that answer. Did anybody mention that to you? I'm not sure. Did you ask whether or not, is that something you would ask? No. If the horse was injured and so on? No. It had no relevance to the injury. I see. Then I would assume that you did discuss with Mrs. Adams what happened, correct? Yes. Did you find out how the horse was cut? Did you ever go over and inspect the trailer and look and see what it was and so on? No. That wasn't important as to the infection or no. I see. Did someone indicate to you that the horse was cut on the trailer? Yes, the cut while trying to be loaded. I'm not sure if the horse cut herself with her own leg or if she got cut on a particular part of the trailer or not. Do you have a mental recollection of this injury on the horse? I believe it was on the front leg, or I believe it was on the inside of one of the front legs and the outside of the leg also. I believe there were 2 lacerations. I'm not for sure 100%, but I do believe that there were 2 lacerations involved. And could you describe for me medically or otherwise what the presentation of the lacerations looked like? How many centimeters, how deep it was, what kind of tissue was involved? They involved the skin, and I believe I would say approximately probably 3 centimeters, and the other laceration was smaller, probably 1.5 centimeters. The depth was 3 centimeters. The length I see. And was there profuse bleeding when you got there? Not profuse, no. It was definitely bleeding, but not profuse. It was continuing to bleed or ooze. I believe most of the hemorrhage had been controlled, had maintained. Did you see, or excuse me, did you need to cauterize or do anything in that regard? No, I did not. And as I understand it, suturing in fact was required? Yes, it was. Now, could you please tell me what you did relative to the suturing for preparation prior to the suturing of the horse? The wound was cleaned. How did you do that? With soap and water. Is that a pre-package you have to do? Do you have to mix that, or what do you do? Well, I used a type of solution to clean it. Okay, and then what did you do after you cleaned the wound? I used a local anesthetic that was given. And what specifically was that? Well, it was lidocaine. It is 2%. Okay, is that topical? It is injectable. And that is specifically detailed for the localized area in which you intended to suture? Yes, it is. All right, and I've heard that, and I know you have heard this in the past, I understood there was some tranquilizer given to the horse. Yes, just to calm it down. All right, so let's see how we're doing on time. Good. I'm going to switch transcripts for just a few more minutes before we do our read back. And again, you don't have to read back. Don't feel like you have to. I know you're in a library. So if anybody wants to pass, feel free to pass. All right. This is the other transcript we've been working on. Talking about those 2 bodies that they found off the freeway and the drag marks and all of that. I'm going to just pick up right at 225. Since we made our way to 225, we'll just keep going, okay? And let's see who's questioning. Defense. Defense is questioning. Perfect. Get a little bit of both. All right. So I'm going to read about maybe 10 more minutes. Okay. All right, here we go. Maybe 15. I have another transcript we can switch to again if we need to. Here we go. Now, Mr. Hall indicated to you, or your investigation demonstrated that Mr. Hall had seen Mr. Williams, strike that, Mr. Myers around in a white Jeep Cherokee at the address there on 22nd Street, didn't it? Yes. And this was sometime between August the 1st and August the 12th? Yes. Your information was that Mr. Myers was not driving the Jeep Cherokee. Isn't that correct? And you may refresh your recollection if you wish. Yes, I think I should, okay? Did you understand my question? Yes, that is true that he had only seen a white Jeep Cherokee in front of the residence and not Mr. Myers getting out of it. So I believe the information was that Mr. Myers was coming up the walk to the house. Is that correct? Yes. And that there was a Jeep Cherokee parked in front of the house? Yes. And at a later time, Mr. Hall saw or noticed that Mr. Myers was no longer at the house and that the Jeep Cherokee was gone. Is that correct? Yes. And you had this information in September? Yes. The 3rd? Yes. Mr. Hall's full name was Bertel Hall. Isn't that correct? Yes. In your interview with Mr. Myers in Cincinnati, when inquiring about some of the people in the neighborhood, one of the names that Mr. Myers gave you was Bert. Do you recall that? Yes, that is true. I believe you testified earlier that you couldn't locate any of those people. Did you determine that Mr. Bert Hall residing at that address was not the Bert that Mr. Myers was referring to? No, I did not determine that. There came another time then when you executed a search warrant. Is that correct? Yes. And where did you execute that search warrant? 1750 West 22nd Street in Los Angeles. And that was the address and the residence that you had for Mr. Myers. Isn't that correct? Yes. And you executed that search warrant looking for evidence that might connect Mr. Myers to the killing of the 2 individuals that you had out in the desert. Isn't that correct? Yes. That search warrant was executed when? September 3rd, 2012, I believe at 11 in the morning. And you searched Mr. Myers' room at the house? Yes, we did. As well as the other rooms? Yes. In searching Mr. Myers' room, did you find any evidence that connected him to the killing of the 2 people you were investigating? No, I did not. You also spoke with another person at the address on September the 3rd, I believe. Isn't that correct? Yes. And that person was a Betty Sinclair? Yes. And in fact, Betty Sinclair signed the search warrant, didn't she? Or the receipt, I believe. You may refresh your recollection if you need to. Officer Gonzalez, I have no objection to you consulting your reports at any time, okay? Yes, that's true. Thank you. Wasn't the name of Betty one of those names that Mr. Myers gave you who might have some information about this case there at the boarding house? I am not sure if she had information about the case or not. Did you ask her about the case? No, but you had the name of Betty as one of those. Betty, Bert, Magoo, I've forgotten the others. Yes. Were there other people that you came into contact at the house on the 3rd of September other than Mr. Hall and Betty Sinclair? There may have been 2 or 3 other people there that lived in the rooms within the house. I don't remember who they were, though. Did you inquire as to the whereabouts of a Magoo? I don't remember if we did or not. Then there came a time when you interviewed, I believe, another witness concerning Mr. Williams, the deceased. Isn't that correct? I may have. I don't remember who that was. Do you recall a witness telling you that she was present when Mr. Williams told Yolanda that he had ripped off his cousins of some dope? Are you talking about Retha Thomas? I believe so. Were you told that? Yes. And when were you told that? That would have been prior to going out to Ohio. So you knew that when you went out to Ohio, that at least you had that information that Mr. Williams had apparently ripped some people off or some narcotics or stolen some narcotics or something. Is that correct? You mean Mr. Williams? Yes. Yes. When you were at the house on 22nd Street, did you inquire as to whether the individual that you knew as D. Dan resided there? I don't remember if we asked anybody there that question. Were you at that time trying to locate the individual by the name of D. Dan? Yes. And you had that information? Did you have the information that D. Dan might be at the address on 22nd Street? That was a possibility? Yes. No further questions of this witness. Thank you very much, Mr. Bristol. Mr. Abackerley? Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Gonzalez, what did you do to try to confirm whether or not D. Dan was at the address? Well, before we went out there again, we had run the moniker of D. Dan, nicknamed D. Dan. We went through the Southwest Police Department, that's Los Angeles Police Department Division, looking for D. Dan. We could not locate one through the files. Other than that, I'm sure that if we had come up with some information on D. Dan, or if I had asked somebody about D. Dan and had received that information, it would have been documented somewhere. We just never got it. And when Retha Thomas told you that the victim, Michael Williams, had indicated that he had ripped some people off, who did she say was present when those statements were being made? Michael Williams, Yolanda Venable, and another person she had only known as Green Eyes. And she also told you that that discussion was with Michael Williams, who told Yolanda that he wanted to take her to Las Vegas, correct? Yes. And also that Michael Williams had been flashing large amounts of money during the course of that conversation and that contact? Yes. What was your reason for going to the defendant's residence on September 3rd, 2012? We were looking for evidence in the case. We were looking for a number of items. We had information that Yolanda Venable had a purse at the time prior to leaving the area. We went looking for that, for her purse. We went looking for any type of blood-stained clothing items, actually anything. We were looking for the car keys to a Jeep Cherokee, registration or any paperwork to a Jeep Cherokee, basically along those lines. When you say along those lines, were there any other items that you were looking for? Yes, firearms, ammunition. Were you looking also for clothing? Yes. And what clothing were you looking for? Well, actually, any clothing, particularly the clothing that was described to me by Retha Thomas. But I just didn't focus in on that alone. It was actually any clothing or bedding or anything. And with regard to the search for the clothing, was there a reason why you didn't search for the clothing in Cincinnati? Yes. Why was that? Mr. Grant had told us prior to my interviewing Mr. Myers that the clothing that Mr. Myers had on in the Los Angeles area is not the clothing that he wore up in Cincinnati. And I think he referred to the clothing as being very clean, new clothing. When I got out to the Ohio area after interviewing Mr. Grant, I interviewed Mr. Myers. Again, he tells me he got rid of the clothing, which is very, very common. So at that point, I felt that he, in fact, got rid of any clothing that had any blood on it. And was that one of the reasons you decided to do the search warrant back at the defendant's house in California? Yes. Now, while you were at the defendant's house, did you actually speak with the people that were there during the service of the search warrant? Yes. Did they give you any information that assisted in your investigation of this case at all? Mr. Hall, the only information that he gave to me was that he saw a Jeep Cherokee. He saw Mr. Myers in the Jeep Cherokee. He could only tell me that he saw the Jeep one time between the dates of August 1st and August 12th of 2010, but nothing further than that. Betty Sinclair didn't have any of the information at all as to Mr. Myers' activities. She could not provide me with anything. And with regard to the information that Bert Hall gave you as far as the Jeep Cherokee is concerned, I believe that you said that when Mr. Myers arrived at the house, the Jeep Cherokee, the white Jeep Cherokee, was parked in front. Yes. And that when he left, the Jeep Cherokee was gone. Yes. And that had occurred about August 1st and August 12th of 2012. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. I have no further questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Bristol. Go ahead. Well, excuse me, Your Honor. This is the reporter, but I don't really have a reporter button, so we'll play reporter. Excuse me, Your Honor. I need a minute to fix my machine. Something is going on here with the cord. Okay, thank you. I'm ready. You may proceed, Mr. Bristol. Concerning the deposition of the vehicle that we've been calling the Cherokee, you had information that it was a Wagoneer, a Jeep Cherokee Wagoneer. Is that correct? A Jeep Wagoneer or some type like that? Yes. And that was a 2010, in the year 2010? Yes. And also with reference to that time that Retha Thomas told you that Mr. Williams and Miss Venable were there at her house, she also mentioned that there was a person there with green eyes. Is that correct? Yes. And she also told you that there were two other people in the Jeep when it was there, didn't she? I think she said that when she saw two other figures or persons in there, she thought she saw those people. If you would like to refresh your recollection, go ahead. Okay, thank you. Does that refresh your recollection? Yes, it does. Okay, I believe in fact what you were told was that there was a male in the front and somebody else in the back seat, but you couldn't say if there was a female or not in the back seat. Isn't that correct? Yes. But for sure, there were two other people in the car. Isn't that right? Yes. She also gave you a description as to how Yolanda was dressed. Is that correct? Yes. And told you, in fact, that it was her understanding that Michael and Yolanda were planning to go to Las Vegas. Is that correct? Yes. And they were planning to go to Las Vegas on the money that Michael had stolen from his cousins. Isn't that correct? Yes. No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Bristol. Mr. Abackerley, no questions, Your Honor. Thank you very much. Detective Gonzalez, you may stand down, sir. Do you have any other witnesses available at this time? Well, my next witness is scheduled for 1:30, Your Honor. 1:30, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, we will recess a little early for lunch. Please do not discuss the case with each other or with anyone else. Do not form or express any opinions about the outcome until it is finally submitted to you. We stand in recess until 1:30. Have a nice lunch. How are we doing? Okay. Perfect. I'm just looking at the time here. All right. I'm going to switch transcripts one more time. And then we'll do read back. Now this transcript, I'm going to go back down to 200. Okay. Because we've done a lot of 225. Okay. All right. This is going to start with plaintiff. Here we go. Did the bank teller, Marcy Kinderman, ever ask you to leave the premises? No. The policeman came inside the bank, and then what happened? Well, about another couple of minutes passed, and then 2-foot patrolmen were walking up the street, and they passed, and they were passing the bank door. They looked in the bank, and then they waved, and then they came in the bank. Who waved? The police outside or the policemen inside? The 2 policemen that were walking up the street waved. Did you see anyone inside waving back? No, I was up at the counter, so that makes me about 50 or so feet to the west of them. Okay, what happened next? I waited a couple of minutes or so, and then I walked down past the counter to see, I wanted to see what was going on. Then I stationed myself between the bank door and the door of the teller's door. There's a little bit of separation there. There's distance of maybe about 15 or 20 feet. 15 feet, I would say. Okay, is that bank premises or Pennsylvania Stock Exchange premises? Neither or both. It's actually one whole building. It's one building. It's all in one building. At this time, with your right hand, did you push some leaflets off of the counter by the accident? Or did you do this by accident? Well, I would say no. I just flicked them with my finger on purpose. Did you push them with your finger? Can you describe to me how you did that? Well, as far as I know, I made a motion with my fingers, flicking them, like this. May the record indicate that the witness has indicated that he flicked them with the back sides of his fingertips. Is that correct? Yes, I will accept that. Okay, that is accepted. You made this flicking motion in the direction of Ms. Kinderman? Yes, across the counter. To the best of your recollection, did your hand extend further towards her direction when you made that gesture? Uh-huh. To the best of your recollection, did any of these leaflets come in contact with her person? Well, they fluttered. I believe that I saw some go as far as her person. 3 or 4 feet across the counter, is that correct? Yes. Was Ms. Kinderman seated or standing at the time? Standing. What was the level of her head in relationship to the top of that partition? She's a fairly tall woman. I would say that her head probably was over a foot above the top of the partition. You indicated she was tall. Can you give me any estimate as to her height, please? I would say she was 5'7" or more. Are you the same height and weight as you were in 2009? I may have been about 10 pounds heavier, but that's just approximate. You appear to be rather well muscled. Do you participate in athletic sports of any kind? Have you ever boxed or anything like that? I hike and I skydive. I competed in boxing in the Army. I believe you indicated that after you had pushed, or however you wish to describe it, the leaflets in her direction, you handed her the note ordering her to give you the money in her drawer. She made a motion with her arm, and the 2 of you remained there for approximately 30 seconds before someone else came over. Is that correct? Yes. During this 1 minute, did you have any conversation with Ms. Kinderman? No. The 2 of you just stood motionless? Yes. You made no conversation with her at all? Not that I recall, no. Did you make any other physical gestures towards her of any nature? Not that I can recall. At that time, did it appear to you that she was going to continue with any transactions involving your note? Well, I really can't say what it appeared like she was going to do. I was waiting to see what she was going to do. Was there any reason why during that 30 seconds that you could not have gone to another window and selected another teller? Any reason at all? There were no restrictions. She was scared, and so was I. And then at this time, after the 30 seconds or so had elapsed, the bank manager, Mr. Barker, came over. Is that correct? Yes. And the proceedings transpired as you have explained to us earlier? Yes. You indicated that approximately 2 or 3 days after this incident took place, that would be about May 4 or May 5, you were arrested at the main branch of Philadelphia Savings and Loan. Is that right? Yes. After this arrest, did you arrange to have your attorney contact the bank and ask them to drop the charges? Yes, I instructed my attorney to do this. To indicate to the bank that you would like to settle this short of any formal legal proceedings, I indicated that I wanted to talk to someone who is in charge of operations of some kind. All right, so let me just date this. And we'll do some read back. Okay. All right, so this read back is going to be defense, questioning, strict Q&A. I'm going to read it once at 225, then I'll go to 200, and the last take will be at 180. Okay. All right, here we go. 225. Now, after you were taken to the emergency room, did you receive some treatment while I was there or after I left? When you were taken to the emergency room, you did go to the emergency hospital, did you not, at some time that evening? Yes. Did you receive some treatment? Yes. What kind of treatment did you receive? I'm not sure. I guess I got my lips sewed up. By one of the doctors that was on duty at that time? I guess so. Were you then released from the emergency room? I went home sometime that night. All right. Did you at any time after that see another doctor? I would have to go back and look through the records. I don't remember. Do you mean that night? At any time after, not just that night. Well, somebody had to remove the stitches. Who was the doctor who removed the stitches? I don't remember. Did you also see a dentist in connection with one of your injuries? Yes. Was that for the tooth? Yes. And was that dentist a Dr. Crow? Do you recall? I don't know. And what did he do in connection with that tooth? Do you recall? X-rays and all that, I guess. As far as your lip is concerned, that is healed at this time. Is that correct? Yes. And you have no complaints regarding your lip at this particular time? Not that I know of. I notice your tooth is still broken. Is that right? Yes. Have you discussed any possible replacement with Dr. Crow? Yes. All right. Let's do it again at 200. There we go. Now, after you were taken to the emergency room, did you receive some treatment while I was there or after I left? When you were taken to the emergency room, you did go to the emergency hospital, did you not, at some time that evening? Yes. Did you receive some treatment? Yes. What kind of treatment did you receive? I'm not sure. I guess I got my lips sewed up. By one of the doctors that was on duty at that time? I guess so. Were you then released from the emergency room? I went home sometime that night. All right. Did you at any time after that see another doctor? I would have to go back and look through the records. I don't remember. Do you mean that night? At any time after, not just that night. Well, somebody had to remove the stitches. Who was the doctor who removed the stitches? I don't remember. Did you also see a dentist in connection with one of your injuries? Yes. Was that for the tooth? Yes. And was that dentist a Dr. Crow? Do you recall? I don't know. And what did he do in connection with that tooth? Do you recall? X-rays and all that, I guess. As far as your lip is concerned, that is healed at this time. Is that correct? Yes. And you have no complaints regarding your lip at this particular time? Not that I know of. I notice your tooth is still broken. Is that right? Yes. Have you discussed any possible replacement with Dr. Crow? Yes. All right. We'll do it one last time. And we will do this at 180. There we go. Now, after you were taken to the emergency room, did you receive some treatment while I was there or after I left? When you were taken to the emergency room, you did go to the emergency hospital, did you not, at some time that evening? Yes. Did you receive some treatment? Yes. What kind of treatment did you receive? I'm not sure. I guess I got my lips sewed up. By one of the doctors that was on duty at that time? I guess so. Were you then released from the emergency room? I went home sometime that night. All right. Did you at any time after that see another doctor? I would have to go back and look through the records. I don't remember. Do you mean that night? At any time after, not just that night. Well, somebody had to remove the stitches. Who was the doctor who removed the stitches? I don't remember. Did you also see a dentist in connection with one of your injuries? Yes. Was that for the tooth? Yes. And was that dentist a Dr. Crow? Do you recall? I don't know. And what did he do in connection with that tooth? Do you recall? X-rays and all that, I guess. As far as your lip is concerned, that is healed at this time. Is that correct? Yes. And you have no complaints regarding your lip at this particular time? Not that I know of. I notice your tooth is still broken. Is that right? Yes. Have you discussed any possible replacement with Dr. Crow? Yes. All right. I'm going to unmute everybody. Again, if somebody wants to, pass on the read back, just say pass. Okay. Not a big deal. All right. So let me know when you find the take that you want. I think all 3 takes are exactly the same. I don't think I changed any of the words by accident. So just know when you guys find your spot.
I found it.
Okay.
My translation stopped because mine went. Did anyone get to more than 50 pages? Mine is more than 50.
Because we probably because it's an hour and a half, huh? That's great.
I think it just stopped like right at the end. So I have to see how far I got. I don't know. That's funny.
And let me write a little message.
Oh.
Did it stop right?
It stopped right after the 225, so I'm going to have to read that one. Oh my goodness. Dear Lord.
That's okay. You just do the best you can.
Okay.
All right. You want to take the first one?
Sure.
Okay.
Question. Now, after you were taken to the emergency room, did you receive some treatment? Answer, while I was there or after I left?
Awesome. I'll go ahead and take the next one, and then Olivia can take the one after that. Let's see. Question. When you were taken to the emergency room, and then dashes, you did go to the emergency hospital, did you not, at some time that evening? Answer, yes.
Okay. Question, did you receive some treatment? Answer, yes.
Awesome job.
Question, what kind of treatment did you receive? Answer, I'm not sure. I guess I got my lip sewed up.
That's what it says, sewed up. All right, question. By one of the doctors that was on duty at that time? Answer, I guess so.
Question, were you then released from the emergency room? Answer, I went from that night. I don't know. I went from something that night.
Do you have home?
Oh, no, I don't.
No worries. So I went home sometime that night. So
Okay.
No worries, just home. That was the only thing.
Question, all right. Did you at any time after that see another doctor? Answer, I would have to go back and look through the records. I don't remember. Do you mean that night?
Awesome. Question, at any time after, not just that night? Answer, well, somebody had to remove the stitches.
Question, who was the doctor who removed the stitches? Answer, I don't remember.
Awesome.
Question, did you also see a dentist in connection with your injuries?
Do you with
And-
one? You have with one of your?
No.
No, it's okay. So just with one, and then what you said of your injuries.
Okay, answer, yes.
Awesome. Question, was that for the tooth? Answer, yes.
Question, now was that dentist, what is it? Something, Dr. Crow? Do you recall?
Yeah, was that dentist A? And
Oh,
then a Dr. Crow.
Dr. Crow. Do you recall? Answer, I don't know.
Awesome. I know that's another funny one. A Dr. Crow.
Question, and what did he do in connection with that tooth? Do you recall? Answer, x-rays and all that, I guess.
Do you guys phrase I guess? IGS? No? Okay, you write it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So IGS, okay.
I've heard I write it out too, but I've heard of that. IGS. I don't think it conflicts with anything, but
Guess.
I've just heard of that, for I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah, I write it out, but I've heard of people using that. So
That one's like so automatic for me. I don't know if I could change it,
I know. I think that's why I never changed it for me, because once I heard it, it was like, oh, I'm just used to writing that out. But it makes sense, IGS. I mean, obviously can't do IG for I go, but anyways, I was just wondering whose turn is it? Sorry, is it my turn?
It's your turn.
Okay. Question, as far as your lip is concerned, that is healed at this time. Is that correct? Answer, yes.
Question, and you have no complaints regarding your lip at this particular time? Answer, no, not. I got not,
Yep.
not, I know,
Do you have that? Not that?
no, I don't have that.
No, that's okay. So just not that I.
Not that, okay, that I know of.
Yep. Perfect.
Question, I notice your tooth is still broken. Is that right? Answer, yes.
Question, have you discussed any possible replacement with Dr. Crow? Answer, yes. Great job, you guys. Awesome. That was great. I like that class. That was nice to have. I didn't feel like we were so rushed,
Yeah, I like that one.
Good. Do you guys feel like you got a good workout?
It was a good workout. Yeah, it really was. Endurance was really, really needed. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Angela's shaking her head. Good.
Yeah.
Yay. Well,
Yeah.
so every Thursday, we're gonna have class from 5:30 to 7. So
That's great. That's great.
yes. Oh,
Yeah.
I'll let Robert know that you guys really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Tell him we said thank you.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
I will.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you guys, and have a wonderful night. And then I'll see you next week. And then if you guys do want to come to the mid speed classes, that's 120 to 160, so it's definitely a lot slower. But that will be on Wednesday nights it's just an hour from 8:30 to 9:30. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Have fun in roller derby.
Okay. Yep. I've got practice tonight, so I'm off. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right. Good night.
Good night.